The letter asked whether I truly believed my granddaughter was unreliable. I had never seen the reference request it quoted, and I had never written the answer beneath my name. The answer used a sentence my son Eric liked to use: "Family is not a stepping stone." Before I could decide why he needed my name on those words, I called Lena and left my shop shirt hanging over the kitchen chair. She answered on the fourth ring. Her voice was low, as if she had stepped away from somebody. "Grandpa? Did you apply for a job at Singh Upholstery?" There was a pause, long enough for me to hear a cart rolling across concrete behind her. "I thought you knew." "I know now. Meet me at Cora's diner. Don't talk to your father first." That was the first morning in 9 years I did not raise the west door at Hale Auto. I was 69 then. I had retired from full-time work 4 years earlier, which in my family meant I no longer drew a regular check, but still showed up every Monday and Thursday before 7. Eric owned the garage. His name was on the deed, the accounts, and the sign. I had helped him buy his first lift, but he had paid me back. The red rolling chest in the second bay was mine. So were most of the older hand tools inside it. Everything else belonged to him. That distinction had never mattered until that letter arrived. Lena came into the diner wearing the gray polo Eric gave everybody who worked the desk. She was 29, old enough to make her own mistakes and tired of being treated as if every mistake still required family permission. She slid into the booth and looked at the envelope beside my coffee. "You really didn't send it?" I pushed the letter toward her. "Read what they quoted." She read silently. Her mouth tightened at the line that said she lost interest easily and needed family structure before trying skilled work. Then she reached the last sentence. "Dad says that. I know. You say things like it." That landed fairly. I had spent years praising people who stayed late and came early. I had told Lena more than once that the garage needed her. I had meant it as gratitude. Gratitude can become an assignment if you never ask what it costs. "I may have helped him believe I would agree," I said, "but I did not agree and I did not write this." She stared through the front window. Across the road, the pharmacy sign blinked from open to open, because one letter was failing. "The job probably isn't there anymore." "The woman who wrote this says it is open until Friday. She thought the answer sounded strange because I recommended you last winter." Lena looked back at me. "You recommended me?" "Mara Singh asked whether you could learn patiently and show up on time. I said yes. I did not promise you could upholster a chair. I have never seen you upholster a chair." For the first time that morning, Lena almost smiled. Then I asked what she actually did at Hale Auto. I thought I knew. Phones, invoices, the appointment book. She added warranty forms, parts pickups, reminder calls, deposits, supply orders, and the envelopes Eric left in a wire basket when cash was tight and he did not want to look at them yet. She worked Monday through Saturday most weeks. Eric gave her gas money sometimes. He paid her phone bill. She lived in the small apartment over his detached garage and did not pay rent. "He calls it helping until things improve," she said. "How long have things been improving?" 2 years. The first question had been, who answered in my name? Before I had an answer, a second question opened underneath it. How much of my son's business existed only because Lena and I were not counted as workers? I called Mara from my truck. I told her the quoted reply was not mine, that my earlier recommendation still stood, and that anything beyond that should be discussed with Lena. I nearly said Lena deserved the job. I stopped myself. A reference was not a verdict in either direction. Mara's voice was brisk, but not cold. She said the position started at trainee pay, Tuesday through Saturday, with a review after 90 days. It involved cleaning old frames, pulling staples, keeping material records, and learning measurement before any finished work went out under Lena's hands. She had not promised permanence. She had promised to hold the opening until 5 on Friday because the refusal had arrived from an address she had not used. Then she asked for Lena. I watched my granddaughter walk along the edge of the diner parking lot while she spoke. She asked about hours, pay, and who corrected her work. She did not ask me what to say. When she returned, the fear on her face was different. It was no longer the fear of having been judged. It was the fear of being allowed to choose. "I have 6 weeks of savings if I take the lower pay," she said. "Then that is one fact." "Dad will say the garage can't run." "That is another fact. Neither one makes the decision for you." Eric had texted me 3 times. The last message said, "You left me with 3 cars on lifts. Only 1 car had open work assigned to me, a brake job on a blue sedan I had taken apart the afternoon before. The other 2 belonged to Eric's schedule." I drove to the garage after Lena left for a parts pickup she had already promised. Eric was standing under the west door with the remote in his hand. At 45, he still had the same way of planting his feet he had used as a boy when he expected an argument. He did not ask whether I was sick. "Where were you?" I handed him the letter. He read the first paragraph and folded it once. Not surprise, not confusion, just time bought with a crease. "Did you send the reply?" I asked. She wasn't ready. That was not the question. "Mara wanted an answer by Monday. You never checked that old email." "So you answered as me." He looked toward the open bay. "I answered what you would have said if you knew the whole situation." There are betrayals that arrive with shouting. This one arrived in my son's ordinary voice, surrounded by the smell of rubber and coffee, as if using my name were a clerical shortcut. "Tell me the whole situation," I said. Spring had been slow. The transmission specialist he used had moved. Insurance costs had risen. 2 larger shops were offering online appointments and Saturday hours. Eric said he needed 1 good season to rebuild his cash. Lena leaving would force him to choose between the desk and the bays. My retirement had already reduced what he could book. "She wants to pull staples for somebody else while this place goes under," he said. "She wants paid training." "She has a place to live. She has a phone. She has family. Those are things you give her. What does she give you?" "You saw the same numbers I did." I had seen piles. I had seen late orders and a calendar with too many names. I had never asked who turned those piles into paid invoices. Eric lowered his voice. "Just tell her you had concerns. You did. You told me she starts projects and changes direction." I remembered the conversation. Lena had left a community college design course after 1 semester, then worked 2 retail jobs. I had said she was still looking. Eric had turned looking into unreliability and put my name beneath it. "I will tell her what I said," I answered. "I will not tell her what you need me to have said." His jaw moved once. "So you're taking her side." "I am taking my name back." I did not leave then. The blue sedan was still apart, and its owner had been promised a safe car by Thursday. I told Eric I would finish that job. I would not begin the 2 Friday appointments he had added under my name. After that, I was done with regular work at the garage. My tools would be out by Sunday. He stared at me as if I had threatened to close a business I did not own. "You can't do that in the middle of the week." "I can finish what I opened and decline what I did not accept." "Those tools have been here since I opened." "They have. They are still mine." He walked into the office and added 2 names to the board. I watched him do it through the glass. For years I had treated that habit as confidence. That day I understood it as a wager. If he wrote down enough work, somebody who loved him would make the hours appear. I spent Tuesday on the blue sedan. Eric sent 2 customers toward me with, "Dad'll take a look." I sent both back to the desk and said I had 1 open job and no new schedule. The first refusal embarrassed me. The second showed me Eric had heard the first and chosen to test it. Lena worked the phones. Every few minutes she glanced toward the bays, as if checking whether I had changed my mind. At noon she offered to stay late to finish the warranty forms. "Are they part of the work you already promised?" I asked. Most of them. Then finish those. Do not promise Saturday because I'm leaving. It feels like we planned this together. We did not. You have your date, I have mine. That mattered. If we had moved as a pair, Eric could have called it a campaign. More importantly, Lena might have exchanged obedience to her father for obedience to me. I wanted her free choice, even if she used it to stay. Wednesday morning, I brought masking tape and a notebook. I initialed the drawers of the red chest and listed what belonged inside. Sockets, pullers, gauges, old wrenches that fit my hands better than newer ones. Eric owned the lifts, compressor, diagnostic tablet, and building. My leverage was no larger than my actual contribution, and I intended to keep it that size. One customer, Mr. Bell, watched me label a drawer. "Taking the good stuff home?" he asked. "Taking my stuff home." "Eric, no?" "Yes." I did not tell him why. Shame likes an audience because an audience can make a boundary feel righteous. I did not need righteous, I needed accurate. That afternoon, Eric booked a steering complaint for Friday and wrote Walter beside it. I crossed out my name and wrote reschedule. He wrote it back. I crossed it out again. "You're embarrassing me in front of Lena," he said. "Then stop writing a promise I did not make." He went quiet. The quiet hurt more than the argument because I knew its shape. He had used it after his mother died, when he was 26 and newly responsible for a garage that had seemed like a better idea while she was alive. Back then I had filled every silence with work. I had mistaken being useful for helping him grieve. That evening he sent me a message saying I was abandoning a sick business. He sent Lena a different one saying she was letting me destroy the place she might inherit. She showed it to me at a laundromat near her apartment because neither of us wanted to meet at the garage or make the diner waitress learn our trouble. "He never said I would inherit it before," she said. "Do you want it?" She watched a dryer turn. "I don't know. That is not the same as wanting to lose it." "No." "What did he send you?" I told her the subject, not the wording. Then I said I would no longer carry messages between them. She agreed not to carry his messages to me. It was the first useful agreement we made because of Eric, and it did not require us to agree about Eric. Lena had enough money for 6 weeks at trainee pay. After that, she would need the job to continue or find another one quickly. The apartment over her father's garage was another question. Eric had not threatened to remove her, but she did not want her housing to become the next sentence written for her. She arranged to rent a room from a coworker at the upholstery shop if she took the position. The room was smaller and cost real money. "This is getting expensive," she said. "Choice often is." I regretted the sentence as soon as I heard it. It sounded too much like something printed beneath a picture of a road. "What I mean," I said, "is that I won't pretend the job fixes everything. It may not work." "What will you do Monday?" she asked. "When nobody expects you to open the door?" I had no answer. That night I went through 4 years of my own calendars. I had not kept them as evidence. They were cheap appointment books, 1 week across 2 pages. After retirement, I had begun marking garage mornings with a small H. At first, there were 2 each week. During busy months, there were 3, sometimes 4. A few Saturdays had no mark because I had gone in after breakfast and never written it down. I did not total the hours. A total would have tempted me to turn generosity into a debt Eric could never repay. What mattered was the pattern I had helped create. Each time he said the next month would be easier, I had answered by making the current month possible. He learned from my behavior that my retirement was flexible and his plans were fixed. I called my sister Ann because she had asked twice why I kept missing our Friday walks. I told her I would be free the next morning. "Did the garage close?" "No." "Did Eric fire you?" "No." I stopped volunteering. She waited. Ann knew I liked to fill silence with explanations. "That sounds harder for you than being fired," she said. It was. If Eric had thrown me out, I could have been injured and innocent. Leaving forced me to admit that I helped build the arrangement I now opposed. That did not excuse what he did to Lena. It kept me from pretending one dishonest email had appeared in an otherwise honest system. Friday morning, Ann and I walked the river path. I checked my phone twice before putting it in the glove compartment. Nobody at the garage had asked where I was. The absence I feared was already ordinary to everyone except me. Thursday showed us what the garage actually was without our assumptions. Lena left for her lunch break instead of eating at the desk. The phone rang while Eric was beneath a truck. I let it ring. A parts delivery arrived with nobody free to check it. At 2, a customer came for a car whose invoice was still in Lena's wire basket. None of those problems was a disaster. Together they were a business model. Eric came out from under the truck, wiping his hands. "See what she's doing?" he said. "Taking lunch. Leaving us hanging. For 30 minutes. Easy for you to say, you're leaving entirely." He canceled Saturday intake and moved 2 appointments to the next week. The garage did not collapse. The people on the phone were disappointed. One went elsewhere. The others accepted Tuesday. June Alvarez kept books for the glass shop 2 doors down. She came by for a battery check and heard Eric complaining about the desk. She said she could give him 12 hours a week beginning Monday. She named her rate. Eric laughed as if she had made a joke. "Lena does more than that," he said. "Then Lena's work is worth more than 12 hours, June replied. She did not look at me or wait for applause. She took her keys and left. Eric refused to call her. Hiring June, he said, would erase what little margin remained. "Closing one day would preserve some of it," I said. "Customers need consistency." "So do workers." He turned away before the conversation could become a slogan contest. I was grateful. We had already said enough true things badly. On Friday afternoon, Lena went to Singh Upholstery for a paid trial. I drove her because her car was waiting on a part, but I stayed outside. Through the front window, I saw frames standing upside down on padded tables and rolls of fabric stacked along one wall. Mara showed Lena how to measure a panel. Lena marked it wrong, shook her head, and started over. Nobody rushed to tell her she had hidden talent. Nobody used the mistake to send her home. After 2 hours, Mara invited me inside. Lena had dust in her hair and a written offer in her hand. The schedule was Tuesday through Saturday. The pay was exactly what Mara had said. At 90 days, they would review accuracy, pace, attendance, and whether Lena could begin preparing estimates. "I was slow," Lena said. "You were new," Mara answered. "Those facts overlap today. They may not always." Mara asked for an answer by 5. Lena looked at me. "You do not owe me the answer first," I said. "I owe Dad a conversation." "That is your decision, too." On the drive back, Lena asked what would happen if Eric apologized before 5. "That depends what he apologizes for." "If he says he was wrong and asks me to stay, then you will know he asked." "You make everything sound clean." "It is not clean. I want you to take the job because I am angry with him. That is a bad reason for you to take it, so I am trying not to hand it to you." She looked out the window. "I want to take it because he tried to stop me." Also a bad reason. There might not be a good reason left. You liked the work before you knew what he did. Start there. She told me about the first chair she repaired on her own, found beside a dumpster. She removed the seat, replaced the webbing after watching library videos, and covered it with leftover canvas. One corner puckered. She kept it because the mistake showed her what her hands wanted to learn next. That interest existed before Eric opposed it and before I approved it. At a stoplight, she said, "I am taking the job if the written terms match." "Then read them once more." She did, using the dashboard as a desk. When the light changed, she folded the pages and kept them in her own bag. We returned to Hale Auto at 6. Eric had closed the doors but left the lights on. The three of us stood between the empty lifts and Lena's desk. No customers, no relatives, no audience to choose sides. The office phone rang once and stopped. Eric placed 3 sheets of paper on the desk. One was a schedule showing Lena at the garage every evening and all day Saturday. One gave me Mondays and Thursdays through the end of summer. The third was Mara's original reference email, printed at last. "Here is the compromise," he said. "Lena can do the training. She helps hereafter. Dad eases out when we're stable. The tools stay because moving them helps nobody." Lena read the schedule. "You filled every hour I am not at Mara's." "For a few months." "Paid?" "Your apartment is worth $900 a month." "Then give me a rental agreement and pay me for work." Eric looked at me. "You hear how she talks now?" "Clearly." He tapped the reference email. "Tell her you had concerns. You did. Tell her I used the wrong account, but the judgment was ours." That was the choice he had been arranging since Monday. If I gave him one sentence, he could make the rest look like an unfortunate method used in service of a shared truth. "I told you Lena was still looking for her direction," I said. "I also told Mara she learns patiently and arrives on time. I did not call her unreliable. I did not decline for her. The judgment was yours." Eric's face reddened. "You recommended her behind my back." "Mara asked me about work I had seen. I answered. She made the offer. Lena makes the choice." Lena took out her phone. Her hand trembled once before she held it still. She called Mara, accepted the trainee terms, and asked what time to arrive Tuesday. Then she ended the call and set the phone on the desk. "Today was my last unpaid day here," she said. "The current invoices are finished. The warranty forms are in the blue folder. I will move out of the apartment by next Sunday." Eric looked from her to me. "You planned all this." "I learned most of it after you wrote in my name," I said. "One season," he said. "That is all I needed. One season with everybody pulling together, and then I would have fixed it." "When were you going to tell her about the offer?" He did not answer. "When were you going to tell me about the reply?" He rubbed both hands over his face. "When the garage recovered, you both would have understood." There it was. He had not expected the truth to remain hidden forever. He had expected our love to make the truth affordable later. The office phone began ringing again. Eric pointed toward it. "This is what happens now." "Yes," Lena said. "Someone has to answer it." He waited. So did we. Then Eric walked into the office and picked up the phone. The call was from Mrs. Donnelly, whose car had begun making a noise after a repair. He listened, asked 3 questions, and scheduled her for Tuesday because the garage would not open Monday. Nothing about the call was beyond him. I watched him solve an ordinary problem while looking at us through the glass. When he hung up, he said, "You see? Tuesday. She could go somewhere else by then." "She could," I said. "And if enough of them do, then you decide what hours you can honestly offer." Honestly. He repeated the word as if I chose it for punishment. "You think one email makes you honest and me dishonest." "No, the email makes the email dishonest." Lena placed the blue folder beside him. "And 2 years of my work makes the work real." Eric looked at it. "You had free rent." "I had housing you could turn into a reason I owed every open hour." "I never threatened to put you out." "You reminded me what the apartment was worth whenever I asked about pay." That was new to me. Eric saw that it was new. $900, Lena said. "Give me a lease for $900 and a wage for the desk. I will decide whether either one works." Eric shook his head. "The business cannot pay what strangers pay." "Then the business cannot have all the work strangers buy." Eric finally picked up the folder. "What am I supposed to do with this?" "The same thing I did," she said. "Learn it, reduce it, or pay somebody." He turned to me. "What if I ask you as my father for 1 month?" That was the honest request I wanted on Monday. It arrived only after every other route closed. "No," I said. He flinched. I nearly softened it with a smaller offer. That would have taught him a direct request was a key that always opened me. A request deserved an answer, not necessarily consent. "I am your father," I said. "My answer is still no." Lena lifted her bag. She left first. I followed after turning off the second bay lights, a habit so old my hand found the switch without thought. Eric remained with the phone and the blue folder. I removed the red chest on Sunday. A friend with a small trailer helped me. We made 2 trips. I left every piece of shop equipment where it belonged and took every tool on my list. Eric did not come outside. Monday morning I woke at 5:30 without an alarm. At 6:40 I stood in my kitchen holding a coffee, looking at the empty hook where my shop shirt had hung. I had wanted a boundary. I had not understood that boundaries create empty hours before they create peace. Eric left 2 messages that week. One involved a scheduling mistake. The other involved a vehicle he wanted me to hear over the phone. Neither was an emergency. I did not call back. Lena's first week went poorly. She pulled a strip of fabric too hard and had to begin again. She came home, exhausted, to a rented room half the size of the apartment over Eric's garage. On Saturday night, she texted that she might have made a mistake. I called and asked whether she was unsafe, unpaid, or being mistreated. No. Then finish the weekend before deciding. She returned Tuesday. At Hale Auto, Eric closed Mondays. He stopped accepting unfamiliar diagnostic work and referred 2 customers elsewhere. A white paper sign on the door listed Tuesday through Friday. The business remained open. It was smaller, which was not the same as dead. The emptiness in my own week did not resolve neatly. On the first Monday, I cleaned the refrigerator, tightened a cabinet hinge, and considered driving past Hale Auto to see whether the west door was up. I reached the end of my street before turning toward the county park. On Thursday, the hours I normally spent at the garage stretched from breakfast to lunch without shape. I opened one drawer of the red chest in my storage room and closed it again. The tools were safe. That did not make them useful. Anne and I resumed Friday walks. She never asked for the complete story. She asked whether Lena had started, whether the garage remained open, and whether I had found somewhere to be on Thursdays. The third question irritated me because the answer was no. "You could simply rest," she said. "I am retired." That was not an answer. Rest had always meant time between obligations. With fewer obligations, I had to discover whether rest could be chosen rather than assigned by exhaustion. Some afternoons I read, some I did nothing and disliked it. Recovery was not sudden enjoyment of empty space. It was learning not to fill that space with the first person who needed me. 10 days after the meeting, I noticed a flyer at the library for a Thursday repair cafe. Adults could bring lamps, fans, small appliances, and bicycles for assessment. The flyer wanted experienced volunteers who could explain when something should not be repaired. I tore off the phone number and carried it in my wallet for a week. 6 weeks after I left the garage, a customer manual arrived at my apartment because an old supplier still had my address. I took it to Hale Auto near closing. June was at Lena's old desk. She had set up 2 trays marked "Today" and "Waiting." The phone rang and she answered it while Eric finished with a customer. The hours on the door were still Tuesday through Friday. Eric looked thinner. He also looked busy in a way I had not seen before. Not surrounded by work, but choosing which work fit. "June gives me 12 hours, he said. "I see. It costs." "I expect it does." The phone rang again. My body leaned toward the desk before I caught it. June answered. Eric noticed. He could have asked me to stay for one job. He did not. I was scared, he said. I waited. That doesn't matter to you? It matters. It does not name what you did. His eyes hardened, then lowered. I can't do this on your timetable. Then don't. I left the manual and went home. By then I had called the repair cafe. My first Thursday, a man brought in a toaster that tripped his kitchen outlet. I told him I would not test it there and that replacing it was the sensible choice. He looked disappointed. The coordinator thanked me afterward for knowing when usefulness meant saying no. The next week I helped a woman tighten the loose handle on a floor lamp while she did the actual work. We had 3 volunteers, then 5. We stopped accepting items 45 minutes before closing so nobody carried unfinished projects home. I put those hours on my calendar. Thursday from 4 to 7 belonged to an agreement I had chosen. The coordinator, Malcolm, made every volunteer state what he would and would not handle. I said I would assess small mechanical problems and help adults use hand tools. I would not repair damaged batteries, fuel systems, or uncertain wiring. I would not take objects home. Nobody accused me of lacking loyalty. Malcolm wrote the limits beside my name and thanked me for being clear. One evening, Denise brought a table fan that had belonged to her mother. The motor smelled burned. She wanted it working because the sound reminded her of summer nights in their old house. I could have spent hours attempting it. Instead, I explained what I observed and why I would not power it again. Denise chose to keep it on a shelf without using it. I thought fixing was the point, she said. Choosing what happens next is the point, Malcolm answered. I carried the sentence home without turning it into a lesson for Eric. It belonged to Denise. Still, I understood why the repair cafe felt different. My experience changed somebody's options. It did not remove the right to choose among them. At Lena's 90-day review, Mara said her pace was still below the shop average, and her records were excellent. The measuring error from her first day had not vanished into a talent story. She had made other mistakes and learned to catch more of them before cutting. Mara extended the position and offered her 2 paid estimating shifts each week with a modest raise. Lena accepted. She had used most of her 6-week cushion, but by the 3rd month she had begun replacing it. She paid rent. She bought her own phone plan. Those details were not glamorous. That was why I trusted them. She invited me to see a finished chair. I went during regular shop hours. Mara showed me where Lena's work began and where another worker had checked it. Lena did not need sole credit to prove the work was hers. The chair belonged to a retired teacher who had chosen a plain blue fabric. Lena walked her through the estimate, including one place where the frame might need more work after the old covering came off. She did not promise a perfect price or pretend certainty to sound experienced. Mara listened from the cutting table and corrected one labor figure. Lena thanked her, changed it, and continued. I remembered how Eric used to stand beside me when he was learning to speak with customers. If I corrected him, he would start the whole explanation again in my words. Lena did not do that. She kept her own sentence and repaired the number inside it. Watching her, I understood that support did not have to sound like agreement. Sometimes it sounded like an adult being corrected without losing the room. The customer signed the estimate and left a deposit. Lena placed the paperwork in Mara's tray, then wrote the appointment on a calendar everyone in the shop could see. Nobody called that clerical work a favor. Nobody used praise instead of pay. It was simply part of the job, named before she accepted it. At 3:30, I looked at my watch. You have somewhere to be? Lena asked. Repair cafe at 4. You could be late once. She said it lightly, then saw my face. No, she said, go, they're expecting you. That was the first time one of us protected a boundary before it was tested. 5 months after the Friday meeting, Eric came to the library near the end of my shift. He had no lamp or fan in his hands. He sat in a chair by the magazine rack while we finished with the last 2 people. He did not wave me over. He did not tell the coordinator he was my son. He waited until I signed out. Outside, he said, "I used your name because Lena trusted your judgment more than mine. I used her housing to keep her working. I kept booking your time because I thought being your son made your no temporary." He stopped there. No sentence about fear. No request that I agree the garage had left him no choice.
"June still works 12 hours?" I asked.
15 now. I raised the price of diagnostic appointments and stopped opening Saturdays. Lena hasn't worked a shift for me in 4 months. What do you want? 20 minutes next week, somewhere that is not the garage. If you say no, I will not come back here to ask. I offered him Tuesday at 2 in the park near my apartment. I did not offer tools, labor, or Sunday dinner. One conversation was not a restored relationship. It was one conversation. As we stood there, the repair cafe coordinator leaned out the library door. "Walter, you here next Thursday?" "Yes." Eric heard me. He did not ask me to move it. We met in the park for 20 minutes. Then we met twice more over the next 2 months. Some things remained awkward. He wanted to explain every number from the bad spring. I listened once and told him I understood the pressure. I did not agree that pressure had written the email. He asked about Lena. I told him to ask her directly. During our second meeting, Eric said he had drafted a message to Lena 4 times and deleted it. He wanted me to tell him which version would work. "Work toward what?" I asked. "Getting her to answer." "Then none of them. Write what is true and let her decide whether to answer." He looked annoyed, but he did not hand me the phone. A week later, Lena told me he had sent 3 sentences. What he did, what he had changed, and that she owed him no reply. She waited 9 days before responding. I did not ask what she wrote. She answered some of his messages and not others. That belonged to them. 7 months after the letter arrived, the week before Thanksgiving filled Eric's appointment book. In the old days, he would have added Saturday, written my name beside 2 difficult jobs, and asked Lena to catch up the invoices after dinner. Instead, he moved overflow work into the following week. He confirmed June's extra paid hours. On Wednesday, he sent me one message. "I know you're at the library tomorrow. Hope it goes well." He did not follow it with a request. That Thursday, Lena prepared an estimate at Mara's shop without calling either of us for permission. Eric closed Hale Auto at 6 with work still waiting for another day. I signed out of the repair cafe at 7 and went home to a quiet Friday that belonged to nobody else's emergency. We were not healed in the way families claim to be healed when everyone returns to the same table. Eric still owned his garage. Lena still worked for Mara. My tools stayed in my apartment storage room. We had built no grand reunion around them. What changed was smaller and harder to fake. My son began paying for the work his business required. My granddaughter was allowed to be new at something. And I stopped lending my name to decisions merely because somebody I loved was frightened of making them honestly. 3 adults closed 3 different workdays. Each of us was responsible for what we had chosen. For the first time in a long while, that was enough.